Hello everyone, I'm doing another random cryptozoology file for you all. The jingling you'll hear in the background is Shadow, one of our cats, who's in a festive mood playing with a toy and playing with my trouser legs. So, yeah, currently he's stuck on them. So, if there's all the jingling and the occasional meow you might hear are from him. But I'm going to be talking about Black Shuck today because we're doing an ABC thing with this. So, let's start. On a stormy evening on the 4th of August 1577 in Trinity Church in Blythburgh, the church was full and the congregation was unsettled as the storm was rumbling overhead and their minister tried to calm them with the words of God. Quite suddenly, and with the loudest crack from thunder above, the doors of the church flew open, letting in not only the howls of the storm, but a great black dog with huge fiery eyes whose paws seemed to be smoking. Upon the two great doors of the church were the scorch marks of the dog's paws, and before the crowd could react, the beast lunged through the aisle, a flaming mist and thunder following it as it lunged upon one man, and upon being grasped by the beast he fell down dead. The creature then galloped on and slashed a boy, rolling out of the building with the thunder, as the church steeple fell in its wake. But it was said upon this same day the beast had come down to them after visiting the St. Mary's Church in Bungay, pushing the door open too and rushing through the crowd. The beast had come between two beings kneeling and lost in prayer, and grasped them both by the throats, wringing their necks and then following the storm out to Blythburgh. The belief was that the devil had come to visit them both that day. European folklore has a thing about big black dogs. Whether it's Old Shook, the Barguess, the Church Grim, the Padfoot, the F-Hound, Gert Dog, or Hairy Jack. Phantom black dogs linked to graveyards and hellhounds are pretty commonplace, and the United Kingdom has a fair few, including the ones mentioned. They've been given a bit of a boost in popular culture over the past 20 years, and no doubt two of those names mentioned might give you a hint as to why. But all the dogs have a common trait to them. That is that they haunt areas that are on the edges of the countryside. They are often reported as local legend, with a superstition that to meet one is an omen of death and doom upon the being. They are all tall black dogs with some with pointed ears, some without, but their eyes are huge, saucer-like, and quite baleful. These stories tend to be reported in time periods after the big werewolf fears of the Middle Ages, and indeed after the wolf was already extinct in some of these regions, but when the fear of witchcraft and demons was still quite prevalent. There is, of course, thought that the black dog association to witchcraft and the fact that these are more described as hellhound with demonic powers linked to fire and storms may be what had built up these thoughts. Certainly, some reports of Black Shuck indicate a ball of light rather than a dog. There is also some thought that, as the last wolf was hunted in Scotland in 1680, these reports may be because wolves were dying out or even gone in these regions around the time, and these might be the last remnants of wolves or even wolf hybrids that have less fear of people but certainly can be larger and more intimidating than your regular dog. But generally, these black dogs are deemed as just some spiritual entity that have no real place in reality and certainly are not flesh and blood. Certainly, Black Shuck is often described as an apparition. Descriptions vary to some including just one grey eye in his head, and the fact it attacked a church might just feed into the idea of hellhounds and demons to frighten the local population. Many like to say that there's a link to Garm and other mythological hellhounds like Cerberus in these beings. These ideas that they always have a link to the dead, but this idea comes from the thought that they might be ancient throwbacks to old beliefs before Christianity that just persist in the areas. Certainly, some of the beings have a link to the old religions, such as the Fey dogs, but the majority are Christian based. The Yeth Hound, for instance, is thought to be linked to the spirit of an unbaptized baby that passed away and is trapped, unable to move into heaven, so haunts the crossroads. There are links to crossroad entities, as well as one European creature that was said to be seen haunting near a gallows just before someone was announced to be executed. It is quite likely that all of these come from something very simple: the idea of dogs bothering human remains, something that's against the idea of most beliefs throughout time. Yet Shook always stood out more. The people of Bungay have come to accept him as part of their cultural identity, and there have been black dog products sold there in recent years, as well as many companies in East Anglia phoning in on the folklore. Black Shook is actually quite popular around here, and that's because there's two aspects to it. The fact that the belief is that the devil came to visit, and particularly the older man said to have been killed is told in some local stories as a man who dared to be gambling during the sermon, and so the devil came to take him, and that is not seen as completely bad. In fact, there's some thoughts that if a man is to see Shook, the name Shook being thought to derive from an old word for devil, they will receive news of woe, especially if he is dragging chains behind him. But for a woman, the dog is a protective spirit to guide them safely upon their way home. Certainly, there are reports of Black Shuck doing such a thing, and some of the other black dog entities are sometimes regarded as companionable and guardians. But there's something else about Shuck that makes them stand out. The simple fact is that that Holy Trinity still bears the dog's mark upon the door. Visitors are said to be able to view the darker marks on it as permanently there and can be seen to this day. Indeed, although Bungay is more famous for celebrating the visit of the devil, Blythburgh is the scene of the more detailed incident, although you may find in some sources they list it as all happening at Bungay and even negate Blythburgh or mix the two up. But certainly, there are said to be reports that in one of the church's books on this day, a man was killed by lightning near one of them, which many believe is linked to this being, that although many have claimed that the whole incident may have been reactions to an electrical storm in the area, and adding the concept of the devil trotting around in dog form was just to give it a bit more hype. My own thoughts are that it probably was just a storm, but there is no telling if the storm caused the feral dog to run into one of the churches to escape the storm, and in trying to deal with the dog someone was injured, or it was so wound up from the storm it attacked any who might try to get between it and shelter. Certainly, living in East Anglia during some of our really terrifying electrical storms and having a dog on hand I had to keep an eye on, I can attest that storm-frightened dogs do not care if they scratch you getting in out of your arms and staying under cover. Just about everyone in East Anglia tends to have some sort of encounter with this being, and certainly one of my friends who's quite engaged with folklore and believes in more than a few things things I'm more sceptical over, believes I had an encounter with a phantom black dog. In university, I was living off-site near an old people's home that was right next to a graveyard, which was particularly active sort of place, according to said friend. Whilst walking out of it and down a narrow little path between the road and our cul-de-sac, I was stopped in my tracks by a particularly large black German shepherd that was almost wolf-like, but stopped right in front of me, looked at me for a little while, and then trotted back back through our area. My friend was right behind me, but she'd stopped to talk to someone, and upon reaching my side, had not seen the dog. When we'd walked through the other side, we had no sign of the dog anywhere and heard no one calling for it. She decided I had seen a phantom black dog. I personally just thought I saw a very nice-looking German shepherd. In the time immediately after, with a lot of things, people tend to believe that there's a 3-day window for things to happen. I can't think of anything that happened, good or bad, but I certainly didn't believe it was a phantom black dog. Though I'll leave it all to your, though I'll leave it for your interpret. Though I'll leave it for you all to interpret. Thank you for listening.